Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to our Kartik month special of Harikatha. So we've been looking at the childhood pastimes of the Lord, and it is said that the great Rasik saints, they consider the 10th canto as the very heart of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yesterday we were reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we read that the Srimad Bhagavatam has 10 main topics, and its 10th topic is the most important topic. And the Sanskrit word that is used to describe the 10th topic is ashraya, or to take complete shelter by surrendering to the Supreme Lord. So Shukadev Goswami takes us through the paces of what it really means to be a devotee. But to become a pure devotee of the Lord, we first need to understand so many other different facets of the Lord, of this creation, of this material world, of the spiritual world. So once we have that foundational understanding of the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then in the 10th canto, we are ready to receive the Supreme Personality of the Lord into our very hearts. And within this 10th canto, these 5 chapters, which is chapters 29 to 33, they are known as the Rasa Pancha Dhyaya, where the Maharas is being described, and this is considered to be the very soul of the 10th canto. But then, before we come to this Maharas, in chapter 22 of the Srimad Bhagavatam of Canto 10, there is a story or a pastime of the gopis worshipping Katyayani Devi. And what do they want? They want Shyamasundar as their husband. These are the unmarried young gopis, Kumaris. And what is their prayer? Katyayani Mahamaye, Mahayogini Adhishwari, Nanda Gopasutam Devi, Patim Me Kurute Namaha. They are saying, my dear Katyayani Devi, you are a great yogini, so please fulfill our desire to have Nanda Gopasutam, the son of Nanda Maharaj, as our Patim, and we offer our obeisances to you. So if the gopis were devotees of Lord Krishna, why are they praying to Mother Katyayani for a boon? Why are they not praying to Krishna himself? After all, they are the greatest devotees of Krishna. So Acharyas explain that deep in their heart, they were actually worshipping Sri Krishna only. But as per societal norms and culture and traditions, it would not have been appropriate for them to approach Shyamasundar directly and tell him, we want you as our husband. So similarly, even Mother Sita asks Mother Parvati to get Lord Ram as her husband. Even when Rukmini falls in love with Krishna, she goes to worship Jagadamba, Mother Jagadamba, to ask Mother Jagadamba, you please make sure that, I get the opportunity to marry Krishna. So similarly here, the gopis are also worshipping Katyayani. But from deep within their hearts, they were actually worshipping Krishna, right? And therefore, Krishna reciprocates with them that their desire to have him as their husband would be fulfilled. So a year later, on a Sharat Purnima day, the Lord plays his flute, a particular note to specifically attract the hearts of the gopis. And it is this 5 chapters, one of the chapters we completed yesterday, which is 29th chapter. And the Lord has played his flute, and certainly the gopis have all come out in a huge rush to go see him, dropping everything that was important to them materially and running towards Krishna because the very heart and soul of their life was calling for them. So after the young unmarried gopis have worshipped Mother Katyayani, they were waiting for a year, counting the days, counting the minutes, counting the seconds. When will that day come? After all, Krishna has promised us so much. So hence this Sharad Purnima night on a full moon, through the power of the Yogamaya potency of the Lord, this Brahmaratri is created, where infinite number of nights were merged together to give the Jivatmas a taste of the infinite bliss. So the moon was very beautiful, the fragrant flowers were blossoming everywhere. So the atmosphere was just so blissful and so transcendental. And the gopis are shocked when Krishna says, okay, why have you come here? Is everything all right in Vraja? You know, it's not proper for married women, unmarried women to step out in the middle of the night to go meet someone. It's not dharmic. Krishna tells them, you know, you should go back and serve your family members. If you're married, you should go back and serve your husband because that is the highest form of dharma for a married woman, is to serve her husband and family. But still, the gopis were very reluctant to leave. Yeah. And they scold Krishna. They ask Krishna, how can you be so cruel to us? You know, after all, we've abandoned everything just for you. And now you're asking us to go back. That's not very right. You are the father of dharma and you know better. You know, we are your devotees. You're supposed to reciprocate with us. How can you send us back? So after chastising Krishna, they begin to glorify Krishna and sing about his pastimes. And like this, they are enjoying themselves on the banks of the river Yamuna, where everything was just most perfect, right? And Krishna was enjoying himself with the gopis. And suddenly, the gopis apparently become proud of themselves. Proud for having received such special attention from Krishna, so much so they thought, I must be really special. That's why Krishna is, you know, spending time with me. And as we have heard, when Keshava knows that a little bit of pride enters your heart, then the Lord is going to do his bit for his devotees to relieve them of their pride and show them further mercy. Therefore, the Lord actually disappears. 1 minute they were enjoying themselves with the Lord, next minute the Lord simply disappears. So how do we understand the love of these gopis? They were not interested in worldly things. And acharyas say, actually, the gopis had the topmost control of their senses. And for true love to exist, you need one more thing called tolerance. No matter what the beloved does, your love for the beloved should not fade. Whether the beloved does things that attract you towards him, or the beloved does things that apparently creates a distance, you know. So we can understand this very simply. For parents who are raising children, they need a tremendous amount of patience and tolerance because the children can really test them in so many different ways. But yet, the parents' love for the child does not recede. Same thing, wherever we go, we have to develop this patience and tolerance. If we want to keep that love and harmony in society, in families intact, then one of the things we have to develop is tolerance. So similarly, on the path of bhakti, the same patience and tolerance needs to be developed to an extraordinary degree. Because the object of our love, after all, we are all here because we love Krishna, or at least we think we love Krishna. At least I think I may have some love for Krishna. So the object of our love, our beloved Lord, Shri Krishna, will test us. And he will test us with contrary behavior. So Srimati Radharani says that Shyamasundara's behavior is sometimes very contrary and mystifying. How is that so? For example, the demon king Bali, he sacrificed his everything to the Supreme Lord. And what was his reward? He goes to Patal Lok. He goes to the netherworld. In the Ramayana, we hear that Bali was killed by the Lord, but the Lord was in hiding as he was doing that. All Shurpanaka wanted was Lord Ram. She professed her love for Lord Ram. And what did Lakshman do? Cuts off her ears and nose. So these are all very contrary, apparently contrary behaviors of the Lord. But at the same time, Srimati Radharani says that the Lord is so lovable. There is no option but to love him and adore him with all your heart. So this is the mood of the gopis. Apparently, Krishna was rejecting them. They didn't want to leave. You know, in material world, we'll say, what kind of woman would have this kind of fortitude and tolerance for someone who's apparently rejected them? We will say, you have very low self-respect. See, this matter has nothing to do with self-respect at all. When it comes to the spiritual path, Krishna will test you through his contrary behavior. So why does the Lord behave in such a way? Is he toying with the gopis' feelings? Is he just, enjoying it? No, actually the Lord demonstrates or depicts these kinds of contrary behavior to increase the rasa for him. So if the devotee wants to increase their love for him, that the Lord is going to enact certain pastimes, because that is why he is known as Rasik Shiromani, the gem of all rasas. So for a genuine devotee, for a pure devotee, they can easily accept such contrary behavior of the Lord as just his grace and mercy and his causeless mercy. So no matter what the Lord does, the gopis' love for him is only increasing. Yeah. So the biggest test for us is when things don't go our way, do we give up Krishna? Because we think he has let us down. Or when things don't go your way, does your love for Krishna increase in intensity? Because you accept that even things that are not going your way are actually the causeless mercy of the Lord. This is actually selfless love for the Lord. So it is not easy. Bhakti is not easy because there will be trials and tribulations for all of us. Krishna is going to test us. So Krishna has left the midst of the gopis. What are the gopis going to do? They are going to go search for him. They are not going to give up that easily. They are not going to be dejected and say, Krishna has left us, let us all go back home. Let's never think of this personality ever again. He's rejected us so openly. So when Krishna suddenly disappears, of course, the gopis experience tremendous sorrow because they've lost sight of him. And what do? They begin to enact the pastimes of the Lord. Each gopi becomes Krishna herself, imitating the way the Lord moved, the way the Lord smiled, imitating his speech. They were just going mad thinking about Krishna. And they would tell each other, I am Krishna, look at me. Look at how nicely I sing. Singing and dancing and feeling such remorse, they were wandering through the Vrindavan forest, Shukdev Goswami says, like a band of mad women. And so they began talking to the trees, asking the trees, have you seen Krishna? Did he pass by this way? You know, he has stolen our minds with his smiles and glances. And then when they see Tulsi Devi all across Vrindavan, they ask Tulsi Devi, after all, you are at the lotus feet of Govinda, you know. The lotus feet of Govinda are so dear to great saints. And since you never leave his lotus feet, have you seen him? Like this, one by one, they are asking different trees and creepers and plants, have you seen our Madhava? Has he touched you as he has passed you by? And they are telling all the trees, you know, you have dedicated your very existence to the welfare of others. You are so kind to the Jivatmas, no matter what they do, you're so tolerant. We have simply lost our minds. So can you please tell us where this Krishna has gone? Then they're talking to Mother Earth saying, you are so fortunate because every millisecond the Lord Keshava is placing his lotus feet on you. So much so your bodily hairs are standing on end. What are the bodily hairs of Mother Earth? All the trees and creepers. You appear so beautiful in this condition, they're telling Bhumi Devi. When did you get this ecstatic symptom? Is it recently when the Lord, you know, walked past here? Or was it much, much earlier when he stepped his lotus feet on you as Vamanadev? From then you are experiencing this ecstasy? They are asking Mother Earth. Or is it possible when he picked you up as Varahadev? Is that when you went into ecstasy? And like this, the gopis are wandering around, searching for Krishna. And they are talking to the bees, they are talking to the creepers. So slowly, they begin to enact all of the pastimes of the Lord, from his killing of Putana to Trinavarta to Shakatashura, to killing of Vatsasura, to how Krishna would call out for the cows by their names, how he would play the flute, how he would admire when other gopas would sing very nicely or they would play very nicely the games, how he lifted the Govardhan hill, how the Lord danced on the heads of Kaliya, how he just swallowed the forest fire by simply telling everybody, just close your eyes, I will protect you. And one of the gopis takes a flower garland from her neck and ties it around the waist of another gopi saying, now I will bind you, Krishna, because you have broken the butter pots and stolen the butter. So they are reenacting the Damodar Leela. Like this, the gopis are wandering here and there, wondering, what are they going to do without Krishna? Certainly he must be somewhere close by. He could not have just abandoned them. And then suddenly they spot the lotus footprints of the Lord. And they say, see, these lotus footprints for which all of the great devotees and saints are searching for. See, the Lord is here. And they're doing some detective work. They're saying, see, the Lord here, you can't see his entire lotus feet. It looks like he is, stretching up on his toes because only the front portion of his feet have left an imprint. Ah, he must be plucking flowers for his beloved. That is what he must have been doing. You see how his weight, and somewhere else they see the Lord's imprint deep into the sand, and they're thinking, well, if the lotus footprint are deeply ingrained in the sand, he must be carrying his beloved. So they are thinking out loud that certainly Krishna is somewhere around here. And of course, who is that one gopi that he has gone with? That gopi must be a very special gopi. That is why he abandoned us, because she is greater than all of us. Of course, all of the gopis are actually expansions of Srimati Radharani only. And Srimati Radharani is the pleasure potency of the Lord. So, technically speaking, this mood of loving the Lord is not unnatural. It is actually most natural. And they think, see, the Lord rejected all of us to spend time with her. And we were thinking that he is reciprocating only with us. And somewhere along the way, they are thinking Radharani must have told Krishna, I can't walk anymore, please carry me. And Krishna must have said, yeah, climb my shoulder. And the minute he said that, even Srimati Radharani, it is stated here, she felt a tinge of pride. And Krishna leaves Srimati Radharani also. And now Radharani is crying out, how can you abandon me like this? I'm just your poor servant. So as the gopis are searching, they suddenly come across Srimati Radharani. She was just bewildered in separation from the Lord. She tells the gopis, this Madhava had actually given her so much respect and so much love. But she was a little casual with the Lord by saying, why don't you carry me on your back? And she tells the gopis, the minute I asked for that, the Lord disappeared from my midst. So now Srimati Radharani, along with all of the gopis, are wandering in the forests of Vrindavan. It has become dark, and they decide it's not safe for us to go further into the deep forests. So they were singing about him, talking about him, and they come back to the banks of the Kalindi river. All of them are meditating on Krishna and waiting anxiously for him to come back. And this is when they sit down on the banks of the Yamuna and they sing the very famous 19 verses of the Gopi Gita, which is in chapter 31. So this chapter 31 is called the Gopis' Song of Separation. So all of the gopis there are crying, wondering when Krishna is going to come back. Will they have an opportunity to see him anymore, or have they disappointed him so much that he has abandoned them forever? And like this, they are praising the Lord through this Gopi Gita. They're talking about the philosophical truths of how this lotus feet of the Lord, just meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord, can destroy all of our past karmas. And in this way, we can surrender to the Supreme Lord. That they are all his maidservants meant to serve him, and all they want is another opportunity to serve him. So like this, they are singing the glories of the Lord, and specifically the glories of the meditating on the lotus feet of the Lord. And they're begging the Lord to kindly come back into their midst. And as they're talking about the Lord, in one of the verses they say, "My dear Achyuta, you know very well why we have come here. Only a cheater like you will abandon women like us who have come to see you in the middle of the night. You called us and now you've cheated us by abandoning us. What did we do? We rejected our husbands. We rejected our children. We rejected our ancestors, our brothers and other relatives, just so to be with you. And like this, our minds have become completely bewildered by your pastimes, by your looks, by your smiles, by your glances. So like this, they are glorifying the Lord. And just as they are thinking all is lost, we don't think the Lord is going to come back. They had, essentially, they had poured their hearts out in this Gopi Geet, waiting anxiously for Krishna to come back. And sure enough, Krishna comes back. Right there in front of them, the Lord appears smiling with a garland and a yellow garment. And just as he had bewildered their mind with his presence and bewildered their mind with his absence, he bewilders their mind again by reappearing in front of them. And every one of them stands up and they were taking his darshan. So one by one, the gopis surround the Lord, decorating him, doing so many different services to the Lord as he suddenly reappears in their midst. So they're enjoying the beauty of the Lord, and their distress is relieved that they see Achyuta finally. And Shukadev Goswami describes this particular moment where the Lord is in the center and he's surrounded by millions of gopis. So Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj, "My dear king, Krishna thus appeared like the super soul, encircled by his spiritual potencies." So the Lord was surrounded by his Shakti potencies, right? All of us Jivatmas are his potency, Shakti potency. And so the dance begins, right? The heartache has vanished. The Lord is back. He's back in their hearts. He's back in their midst. And the gopis ask Krishna a question before the actual dance begins. And their question to the Lord is, different kind of jivatmas, specifically the human beings, the question that they ask the Lord is, some people reciprocate affection only if the other person is affectionate to them. In the sense, affection happens or is exchanged between two jivatmas only if it is mutual. I have affection for you, you have affection for me, and therefore we have a loving relationship. And the gopis ask Krishna, but there are some people who show affection even towards those who are not affectionate towards them, who may be indifferent and even inimical to them. Still, they are able to exhibit their love for them. And then there is another category of people who do not show any affection towards anyone. And they ask Krishna, can you explain these three categories of people? One is mutual affection. One is affection in spite of the other person being indifferent or inimical. And finally, the third category is those who do not show any affection at all. And the Lord responds to them by answering, by clarifying the question that they have posed him. So the Lord says some people are naturally affectionate, irrespective of what the other people's or the other person's mood may be. Right? So they are the true well-wishers of all of the Jivatmas. These are all those self-satisfied spiritual beings who are not envious of others whatsoever. Right? So the Lord gives them explanations on their question, and he also speaks some philosophy, and he understood the deeper meaning of their question. So he says, actually, for my sake, you rejected everything. You disregarded the Vedas instructions. You abandoned your relatives. And the reason Krishna is telling them, I left your midst, is to increase your attachment to me. And the Lord tells them, even though I physically disappeared from your sight, I never stopped loving you. Therefore, please do not have any ill will towards me, because I am your beloved. And this particular chapter, chapter 32, ends with Krishna telling the gopis that he cannot repay them for their spotless service. So the Lord is telling them, I am not able to repay my debt for your spotless service, even within a lifetime of Brahma. That is how glorious the gopis' position is, that the Lord is telling them, I don't know how to reciprocate with you, because you have offered yourselves to me, and everything that you've done is so spotless. You have worshipped me, the Lord tells them, you have cut off all of your domestic relationships. And he says, I know it is the most difficult thing to be absorbed in me and to give up your family. Because family bonds are so hard to break. Naturally, there will be love and affection in a family. But to break those affectionate ties with family and to be completely dedicated to Krishna, Krishna says, how can I reciprocate with such love? And Krishna gives them an instruction. Therefore, please let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. He says, I can't pay you for what you've done for me. Everything that you've done for me is spotless. So your reward has to be your seva itself. The Lord is saying, the reward is not me. The reward is your opportunity to do the seva. So you can now understand why when we describe what is Krishna consciousness, seva is part of it. So Krishna consciousness is not just sitting alone and meditating the names of the Lord or chanting the names of the Lord. Krishna consciousness is predominantly, or most importantly, giving ourselves to Krishna. So, which is what Krishna is glorifying the gopis for. In one verse, the Lord is explaining to us what is it that binds him. Our selfless service and love towards the Lord, which is demonstrated on a daily basis, is what allows us to bind the Lord. And therefore, the service that we offer to the Lord itself, Krishna is saying, is the compensation. Because I don't know what I can do for you. What is it that I can do for you? You're not looking for anything material. You're only hankering for service. So now that you have that service itself is your compensation. That means moksha is also not your compensation. You're not looking for moksha. You're not looking for liberation. So the Lord says, your glorious deeds itself is the compensation. That's the reward. So one gets the satisfaction and transcendental bliss of having opportunities to serve the Lord selflessly. When they heard the Lord make this comment to them, oh, all of their distress was gone. And then the rasa dance begins, right? And Shukadev Goswami says that the gopis were arranged in circles, and the Lord expands himself and enters between each pair of gopis. And that is how the dance begins. And soon, as the dance is going on, surprisingly, the demigods appear out of nowhere to witness something that nobody else is able to witness. So the demigods with their wives and all of the celestial beings, the Gandharvas, they were singing the glories of the Lord as the Lord was dancing with all of the gopis. So each gopi's desire to have the Lord as her lover or as her husband was satisfied through this rasa dance. So in the beginning we said this happens for a Brahma Ratra. So this dance continues for an entire night of Lord Brahma, which is 4.3 billion solar years. So the Lord simply expands time for the pleasure of the gopis so that they could have this loving pastime with the Supreme Lord. So it was not just a 30 minutes thing. It went on for a very long time. And not just with hundreds of gopis, with millions of gopis. So in this way, the Lord fulfilled their desires by dancing with the gopis. Of course, the wives of the demigods were observing all of this from their respective Pushpaka Vimanas. Their minds become agitated. They also want to have the opportunity to dance with the Lord, but of course they cannot. So they are just witnessing this wonderful pastime of the simple gopis who have captured the minds and hearts of the Lord, and where the Lord is fulfilling their eternal desire, right? So like this, the rasa dance concludes, and they enter the river, and they enjoy themselves in the river as well, splashing water with each other, and laughing, joking with each other. And that is when Parikshit Maharaj asks another question. How is it that the Lord enjoyed himself with the gopis, some of whom were married? So technically speaking, they were the wives of other men. Did he not violate dharma by doing that? And Parikshit Maharaj says, I have this doubt. Please destroy this doubt. Because externally looking at this particular pastime and hearing this pastime, it appears that the Lord violated social norms. To which Shukadev Goswami says, he is the supreme controller. Whatever he does, morality is something that exists in the material world. It is there for a reason, to help us lead regulated lives. But when the Lord comes in contact with the demon or with the devotee, both the demon and the devotee are purified. The Lord is not contaminated. So it may appear like it is a transgression, but the Lord is like fire. You pour a demon into the fire stays. If a devotee enters the fire doesn't get polluted. A demon enters the fire doesn't get polluted. So Shukadev Goswami Swami is telling Parikshit Maharaj, this is the Supreme Lord, and Jivatmas cannot imitate him. So it would be egregious for a Jivatma to think, oh, the Lord himself has done this, so why can't I do the same thing? Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj, if a Jivatma tries this, they will only bring upon themselves self-destruction. And then Shukadev Goswami says that great saints have venerated the Lord. And when they venerate the Lord, all of their statements are 100% true and accurate. Therefore, we should always follow the instructions of the great acharyas. So only those who are free from false ego truly understand these very confidential pastimes of the Lord. Not all of us can really understand this particular pastime. There is nothing pious or impious when it comes to the Supreme Lord. Everything that he does is for the benefit of the Jivatma. It is for the ultimate benefit of the Jivatma. And therefore, we have to follow the instructions of Acharyas when they say that we have to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord and do our best to serve his lotus feet. That we should give up all of our material entanglements and surrender ourselves to Krishna. There is no such concept of bondage for the Supreme Lord. Bondage is only for the Jivatmas who are come under the illusion of Maya. So yes, technically the gopis may be married, but ultimately we are married to the Supreme Lord because we are his part and parcel. So who came first? Is our relationship with Krishna coming first, or is our relationship on the material platform coming first? Our relationship with the Supreme Lord is eternal. Our relationship with other Jivatmas in the material world is temporary. Therefore, we cannot look upon it as if the Lord was violating any social norms, because the Jivatma belong to the Supreme Lord. So he's just staking ownership of those Jivatmas who have truly surrendered to him. So what is wrong in that? Because the Jivatmas belong to the Lord. He wants you back in the spiritual world. And through this process, he just intensified the desire of the gopis to always be with him. So after an entire night of Lord Brahma had passed, Krishna then tells the gopis, go back home. I've satisfied your desires. Of course, who wants to leave the presence of the Lord? So they did not want to leave the presence of the Lord. But this time, they complied with his command, because it was a command now. And Shukadev Goswami ends this Rasa Panchadhyay, the last shloka of this Rasa dance, by saying that anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. And Shukadev Goswami concludes by saying this to Parikshit Maharaj. Thus, such a person who hears these pastimes will quickly become sober, and they will be able to conquer lust, which is the only disease of the heart. So once we have conquered lust, then our love for Krishna shines forth. Yes. So all of these contradictions conjoin in one thing and one thing alone, that we belong to Krishna and Krishna belongs to us. As long as there is this sense of I, God cannot exist. So when you recognize that you are part and parcel of the Lord, not that you want to merge with him, but that you want to serve him because that is your rightful role and responsibility. Yes. So we also have to develop this devotional thirst for the Supreme Lord. That thirst will dissipate the minute a little bit of pride comes in your heart. See, even as practicing devotees, as sadhana bhaktas, we can develop pride because of the sevas that we are given in the temple, or we feel that we are special, we have achieved something great. No, 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 no. If you do that, Krishna will disappear. He will not give you an opportunity to serve him. So the more services that you take on in the temple or for the pleasure of the Vaishnavas, the more humble we must become, knowing that it is Krishna who is giving you these opportunities. One day a devotee told the Lord, "My dear Lord, every day I am seeing you with this peacock feather. Every day, the same outfit, the same garland, the same peacock feather. I am bored of this look of yours. Why don't you change it?" The minute he said that, Krishna banished him from Golok Vrindavan. And when Krishna banishes him from Golok Vrindavan, the devotee becomes so bewildered. He yearns now to see just that vision of the Lord with the peacock feather on his head. He misses it. So, through this particular pastime, we can understand that when we have sevas and special opportunities to provide sevas, to serve the Vaishnavas, to serve the devotees, to serve the Lord, because by serving the Vaishnavas, you are serving the Lord. If you ever think, oh, this is the same old thing I'm doing, then complacency has set in. No, we should never allow this to happen as devotees, because Krishna will just disappear from our midst in an instant. So this devotee was separated from the Lord simply because he told the Lord, I want some variety. You look the same to me. And the Lord calls him back a little time later and he says, so what do you think? Krishna had not changed. He still had that same peacock feather and a yellow garment and a Vaijayanti mala around his neck. And the devotee told him, this is the sweetest look I have ever had. I don't want this look to change. So we can become too familiar with our services. We can take it for granted. And the minute you take your services for granted, Krishna is not there anymore in your midst. You may think, oh, I'm still doing the seva. But are you doing it for the pleasure of Krishna, or are you doing it for, enhancing your own ego? So this rasa that the gopis have for Krishna is not something ordinary. We can only yearn for such kind of love for the Lord. Yeah. So no matter what Krishna does or says, their love for Krishna is just constantly increasing. He tests them by abandoning them. And he becomes bound when they don't abandon him in return. Right? So their yearning for the Lord simply intensified when the Lord disappears from their midst. So the Lord similarly will test us on the path of bhakti. We should be very careful that we don't take the Lord for granted. And we should recognize when pride comes our way. Because if pride comes, then Krishna disappears. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagatguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari.